Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna, once again bringing you all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports for your fans out there like you and me. This is episode number 309, and in this episode, we're here once again to look back at the week that was in the 2025 NFL season, and towards the end of this episode, we'll look ahead to the upcoming week that is to come, as we are on the road as we begin this stretch of the second most wonderful time of the NFL year. So yeah, this past week we began the second most wonderful time of the year, and that is the home stretch of the NFL playoff, the playoff clinching, the positioning, and trying to get a playoff spot in general, or for those other teams, their preparations for Cancun at the middle portion of January. So yeah, we're entering that most important stretch, that second most important stretch of the regular season, as we're getting close to the end of the regular season, heading into the playoffs in January. Playoffs? Yes, I said playoffs. So that all began with week number 14. Some post-Thanksgiving shenanigans happened this past week, and we're going to get into it here in this episode. Make sure you follow Very Cold Lasagna on social media for extra stupid takes that I have over there on Twitter, as well as Instagram. And make sure, if you're listening to the audio side of things, rate and review the show, whether it's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts for all my audio listeners there. And if you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you smash the subscribe button. And if you're not already, what are you waiting for? Hit the subscribe button and leave a comment down below with the topic at hand. In this case, it's week number 14 of the 2025 campaign in the NFL. And hit the like button, turn on the notification bell, and share this podcast with your friends, your neighbors, or whoever's around you. And yeah, share the good, the bad, the ugly about this filthy casual podcast entitled Very Cold Lasagna. So let's talk about the past week that was in the NFL, and that is week number 14, as we kick off the road, the final stretch towards the playoffs, as we had the final set of teams on their bye weeks. They're very late and kind of out of date, little vacay, wherever they were in this very cold, with some weather, with some very cold lasagna, self-promotion. But anyway, the final four teams on bye this past week were the Carolina Panthers, the New England Patriots, the New York Giants, and well, lo and behold, my team ended up on the list too, and that was my San Francisco 49ers. So all four of those teams were on bye this past week, and yeah, next week, that's it. Every single team will be back in action for the rest of the year, meaning the final 4 weeks, and then yeah, we're full speed ahead towards the end of the season. So no more bye weeks after this. And then as we enter the final month of the regular season, we are now officially on playoff watch. That means we are in clinching season, elimination season, and all that stuff. This week though, we didn't have any clinching parts yet, so we're still on elimination watch. So we already had a couple teams eliminated going into this week, and those teams were the New York Giants, the Arizona Cardinals, the New Orleans Saints, the Tennessee Titans, the Las Vegas Raiders, the expected suspects. And then going into this past week, the teams that had the eligibility to be eliminated were the Cleveland Browns, aka the Skid Marks, the New York Jets, the Washington Commanders, the Minnesota Vikings, and the Atlanta Falcons. So most of them were the expected suspects, with the exception of the Commanders, which we'll get into when we talk about them. So this beginning of the second most important time of the NFL year began on Thursday Night Football in a gotta-have-it game between the Detroit Lions and the Dallas Cowboys. And in this game, after allowing them to catch up from a 27-9 lead, Jahmyr Gibbs stopped the bleeding for Detroit with 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns to give the Lions a much-needed win over Dallas, 44-30. And yeah, what was a rather hectic game for both of these teams. It was a gotta-have-it win for both of them to keep their playoff hopes alive. Unfortunately, that didn't come for the Cowboys for as hard as they fought. Dak Prescott in the offense, they managed to keep pace. They managed to catch up after a couple of mistakes. And that was thanks to CeeDee Lamb's great performance. But unfortunately, he left early in the third quarter due to a concussion. And that's where the wheels fell off for this team. Dak got picked on the very first play of the second half. And then he got sacked twice on key downs in the fourth quarter. And that pretty much sealed the deal for the Cowboys. And of course, he also had the Jahmyr Gibbs touchdown runs that he had in the fourth quarter that the defense gave up. And when CeeDee Lamb went down, George Pickens, he was pretty much a no-show in this game. And the defense also eventually caved in this one. So for as much as the Cowboys tried to fight back in this game, they broke down in the end. They just had one too many mistakes that they couldn't overcome. And well, now here they are, pretty much on life support with their playoff hopes. And the only way that they could make it into the playoffs at this point is by winning the NFC East and pretty much winning out and hoping that Philadelphia collapses down the stretch. Now for the Detroit Lions, this was pretty much the performance that they needed after a Thanksgiving letdown. Jared Goff and the offense played at their best in a game they also needed badly. Amon-Ra St. Brown, who wasn't sure, who the Lions weren't sure that he was going to play, he ended up playing. He got it out with big key catches alongside Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, and David Montgomery. But Jahmyr Gibbs especially, he pounded the Cowboys' run defense with those two big runs, and in general had a very effective day. So yeah, the Lions got all their stars, including Goff, to produce points on the board. And they played mostly mistake-free football to save their season for now. But they do face a bigger challenge next week when they go to Los Angeles to face Goff's old team in the Rams. In a rematch of a rematch of a rematch from these last 2 or 3 seasons. So now we move on to the Sunday slate of games, starting with the early morning portion as the Seattle Seahawks took on the Atlanta Falcons in Atlanta. And it was a stalemate at halftime, 6-all, but a 100-yard kickoff return from Rashid Shaheed ended up breaking that deadlock. And the door opened for Sam Darnold and the offense to heat up with 3 touchdowns from Darnold. And it ended up becoming a 37-9 rout in favor of Seattle. And yeah, and for the Seahawks, this was pretty much their best outing in a few weeks. They've been on and off. They've been on and off offensively since losing to the Rams a couple weeks ago. But this was their best showing by far. Even in fairness, it was against a poor Falcons defense, but they rode the wave of Shaheed's kickoff return touchdown. Sam Darnold was slowly dicing up Atlanta's defense with his obvious chemistry with Jackson Smith-Njigba. Smith-Njigba, he really rose to the occasion too with 2 of Darnold's 3 touchdowns. And it didn't take much effort either. And yeah, Jackson Smith-Njigba continues to make his case on why he should earn another contract with Seattle. So nice for them to wake up right on cue as they have one more game to do so against the Indianapolis Colts. More on them later. Before a big rematch with the Rams in 2 weeks' time. So for the Atlanta Falcons on their end, I mean, it's obvious that Raheem Morris has no choice to roll with Kirk Cousins because, well, Michael Penix is not there for the season anymore. But God, that doesn't mean his Kirk Cousins is any more putrid and just hard to watch than his previous performances. Like, the dude can barely move anymore. The dude can barely sling it out. He's just like too scared to just throw it anymore. I mean, at least when he was healthy, when he was kind of healthy, he checked it down, but he wasn't afraid to chuck it either. But now he's just like a shell of his former self. So yeah, Raheem Morris, I'm pretty sure he's gone. And I imagine the GM hopefully will also be gone. So whoever this new head coach and GM, hopefully GM duo will be, is going to have to make some tough decisions on the next quarterback. Especially if they don't also want Michael Penix Jr. around either, given his own injury history. Now, down in Baltimore, you had a key matchup between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens for the AFC North. Aaron Rodgers ran and threw for a touchdown, but the Steelers had to cling along for dear life to a late fourth quarter lead. And Alex Highsmith saved the day for the Steelers, stopping Lamar Jackson on the Ravens' last gasp to take first in the North, 27-22. The Steelers' offense looked good in this one. They finally came alive, right on cue after dismissal performance last week at home against the Bills. Rodgers had some nice deep balls, 3 of them at least. One of them went to DK Metcalf for a big one. He had a swing pass and catch touchdown to Jalen Warren, and again he ran for one himself. So all in all, a generally effective day for the offense, and this is exactly what they needed in these as they go into their last 4 games. So they'll need to do it again when they take on a Dolphins team that is also kind of surging on next Monday. And they're also going to need it again when they take on the Lions in 2 weeks. So if they want to maintain this AFC North lead, which they kind of essentially have by this point, as long as they keep playing like they did against Baltimore. Meanwhile, for the Baltimore Ravens, they managed to come back from a 17-3 deficit. Lamar Jackson finally awoke from his month-long slumber, and which I don't know what exactly is causing that slumber, but he managed to finally use his legs. He managed to finally make some mid-range throws to score and get the ball downfield. Although they were robbed of a Isaiah Likely touchdown, but they still managed to have a chance to win the game at the end. But typical Lamar, he went back to slumber by getting sacked by Highsmith in the final play. So yeah, that was basically a symbolization of what has been going on with Lamar Jackson in this Ravens offense in the last month. And I gotta have it a game with a pretty much a favorable setup in this last month, with the Bengals up next, and then you have the Steelers again, and then you also have the Patriots, and then I think another winnable game the week after the Bengals. The Ravens failed again. Like, something is clearly up. Like I said last week, something's clearly up with Lamar. Meanwhile, speaking of the Bengals, they headed up to Orchard Park to take on the Buffalo Bills in another gotta have it game for both of these teams. And it ended up being a shootout in this one. But in the end, Christian Bedford saved the Bills with a pick 6 on Joe Burrow in the fourth quarter to change the tide in the Bills' favors, eventually giving them the win in a snowy shootout, 39-34. The Bengals played particularly well in this one, especially on offense, just as you could imagine in another must-win game. But Burrow is going to be looking back at this one mainly because of those 2 crucial mistakes that sealed the game and this loss for Cincinnati, and likely their playoff hopes, because, well, a lot of people thought they would go make the run again to 9-8 and get some help from the Steelers opposition, the Ravens opposition, but no, here they are. They sit at 4-9. And yeah, Joe Burrow, they're going to be looking at what happened earlier in the season, and I question about them bringing back Joe Burrow. And sure, he did play really good in these last 2 games, but here they are sitting at 4-9, and it's just like, oh, what do you do now? What do you do now? Especially even with the favorable schedule coming up against the Ravens, the Dolphins, Arizona, and the skid marks. Even if those aren't guarantees, like, they'll have to win those and then hope the Steelers slip up to snatch the division at 8-9. Meanwhile, for Josh Allen, the Bills, I'm going to keep beating this dead horse because they always do this every week. They'll do well. They'll do well at home. They'll do well 1 week, and then they'll shit the bed the next week. But I'm going to say it again. Josh Allen and the offense played their asses off in a must-win against Cincinnati. But looking at two other specific players that aren't, actually three, that played well on the offense. Dawson Knox finally got some love from Allen, and Dalton Kincaid also shined in his return. James Cook cooked the Bengals defense on the ground, and so did Josh Allen in several pivotal moments. But also, for as maligned and bad as the defense is, Christian Bedford got the game changing pick six. So yeah, that's that. But the Bills still need more consistency, especially on the road when they play. So if the Bills want to at least get a playoff spot and clinch that playoff spot, they got to carry this kind of performance, especially with the big matchup next week against the Patriots in a rematch that they surely would want to avenge from back in week 5. So down in Cleveland in a good old tank bowl, the Tennessee Titans took on the Cleveland Browns as Tony Pollard and Cam Ward each scored 2 touchdowns apiece to give the Titans a win over the Browns, but of course with the cost, 31-29. As I mentioned, the Titans win does come with the cost of draft positioning. Obviously, you have teams with very low profit margin because the Titans are 1-11. The skid marks are 3-9. So, yeah, not really much of note for these teams. But yeah, for the Titans, who held the number 1 overall pick, who held the number 1 overall pick going into this game. Yeah, I mean, like somebody had to out tank the other in this one, and it surprisingly was this team. With how severely lacking they were on all ends. Like there was basically nothing from Tennessee going to this one, and yet they did well in running the ball and protecting Cam Ward, who still had more flashes, but a lot of mistakes on his end. But they managed to gut out the win. But in the end, they still surrendered the first overall pick to a team I'll talk about later by winning this one. But again, one team had to out-tank the other. And that was the Cleveland Browns. So before I talk about one specific aspect, I'll give a little bit credit to Shedeur Sanders. He played pretty much his best game in his short tenure as a starter with 3 touchdowns. Granted, gets a shit Titans defense, and that was enough for Kevin Stefanski to grant Shedeur the starting role for the rest of the season, the final 4 games. So another extended look for Shedeur to prove himself as whether or not he could be a little bit of a long-term starter, more starting audition role for next season. Especially if Deshaun Watson is healthy enough to come back for next season. But just like the Titans, one team had to out-tank the other, and the skid marks once again did skid marks things with the Quinshon Judkins badly botching whatever Wildcat Philly special play that Kevin Stefanski drew up. And people on Twitter were saying, what the fuck were they doing? What the fuck were they doing on this play? Why was Quinshon Judkins doing this shit? And yeah, people were calling that stupid, but I find it kind of smart. I find it kind of genius. I mean, even though it's typical skid marks things, but Kevin Stefanski, I feel like, yes, it'll probably cost him his job, but he understood the assignment. He understood, being a skid mark. Yeah, he needs to do the assignment of trying to get a top 3 or top 5 pick. So, yeah, or even if he gets a little bit closer, maybe the number 1 overall pick. So, yeah, Kevin Stefanski understood the tanking assignment, if you know what I mean. So down in Jacksonville, there were AFC South stakes at hand in an all-important matchup between the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Indianapolis Colts. And Travis Etienne ran through the Colts for 2 touchdowns, and the Jags took care of some rainy business and sole possession of the AFC South in a blowout of the Colts, 36-19. And the Colts still can't buy a win in Jacksonville in over a decade, but that's the least of their matters right now. Because for as bad as they lost again in Jacksonville, the worst thing that they could have had coming out of that loss was losing Daniel Jones to not just an injury, but the kind of injury that he got. Towards the end of the first quarter, he suffered a non-contact leg injury. Like no one was around him, and then he just slipped on the turf, and then by his reaction, him slamming his helmet on the ground, you knew that was very bad. And lo and behold, a day later, we found out the kicker. I'm not talking about like a kicker. We found out what the kicker of that injury was. And it's one of the 2 worst words that nobody wants to hear in sports. And yeah, it's not good. Torn Achilles. Yep, Daniel Jones suffered a torn Achilles in Jacksonville. Man, that is brutal. That's brutal for both Daniel Jones and this Colts team. So, and I think Daniel Jones was going into this game already playing with the fibula injury on his left, which placed more pressure on his right leg. And some people will call it questionable for the Colts to play him when he was already dealing with that injury. Maybe Daniel Jones wanted to play with that play, although maybe there's an argument that can be made that the Colts should have forced the issue by not having him play. But either way, this is just a brutal situation all around. Like the Daniel Jones he was playing like the best year of his maligned career, and this happens to him. Like, for as much as we call him Danny Pennies and we lull on him when he was with the Giants, he was doing very well with the Colts, and now this happens. This is very bad for Daniel Jones. And now when it comes to the Colts, they've lost three straight since the bye week. Oh man, talk about brutal all around. And given how Riley Leonard, the rookie backup, played in relief, man, I don't think the Colts had much of an option like letting Daniel Jones play. Like, I kind of can't blame them on both their and Daniel Jones's part. So when you look at the Colts right now, a promising start that saw them hold both the division and the AFC in their hands, it's pretty much gone. It's pretty much gone with 3 straight losses, and now this. And what'd they do to try and salvage their season? They signed Phillip Rivers. To the practice squad, and they're probably going to eventually promote him to the active roster if Riley Leonard, who's dealing with a knee issue, a week-to-week knee issue, and then Anthony Richardson still can't play because of an eye issue that's been keeping him on IR. Boy, oh boy. To think that this season would rapidly fall on the Colts, and now it's desperation time for them to drag Phillip Rivers out of retirement. Yeah, this season, like a promising season, like I said, a promising season for the Colts that would have saw them finally win the division, host a playoff game for the first time in forever. It's now falling flat on their no, not flat. It's crashing hard on them. But maybe if, like, even though Phillip Rivers has been gone for like 5 years from football, maybe he might be able to provide something. I don't know. Maybe he could prove us all wrong. But 5 years out of football. You're calling me crazy. Like, I don't know. But I don't know, man. This Colts team, and there's also a lot of injuries on both ends. So, yeah, talk about a brutal fall for the Colts. Meanwhile, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, even when Daniel Jones was briefly there, they came ready to play. They knew what was at stakes on all fronts. Intercepting Daniel Jones on the opening series, cashing in with Trevor Lawrence, finding Jacoby Myers for their own first points. Lawrence played one of his better games with smarter, precise passes to almost everybody, mainly to Jacoby Myers and Brian Thomas Jr., who I think should be utilized more, given his performance. And the defense was flying all over the place in this rainy game, generating 3 turnovers on both Jones, Riley Leonard, and Jonathan Taylor, who they bottled up in this one. And yeah, the Colts, when you look at the Jaguars in this AFC South race, I say they pretty much stand alone in this one, as long as they don't let up. They do have a little bit of a tougher slate ahead of them as they play the Broncos, and not sure who else they play coming up. That's harder on their end, but as long as they play up, they play like this, I think they could win the division. It's going to come down to them and the Texans that win this division. So the AFC South is all but theirs to lose. Meanwhile, down in US Bank Stadium, the Minnesota Vikings took on the Washington Commanders. JJ McCarthy's return to the lineup after a 1-week absence jolted the offense with a 2 touchdowns showing from their QB and a strong running game to shut out the Commanders 31-0 after the Vikings got shut out themselves. They reversed a shutout. I'm sorry, but this is a new embarrassing low for Washington. Like literally 1 year after going to the NFC Championship game, like this happens to them. This is the season. This is the part of the season that happens to them. Disappointing, man. Very disappointing. And the fact that they trotted out Jaden Daniels that had a dislocated elbow, and I don't know if it was Dan Quinn that forced him into playing or Jaden Daniels wanted to play. I have no idea. I don't know what the POV was from both of their ends, but I still highly question that. I still highly question it either way. And well, even when he was wearing a protective brace on the dislocated elbow, Daniel Jones looked uncomfortable throwing the ball, leading the team. And in those 2 red zone drives, the Commanders couldn't generate shit. And then that was when the wheels eventually fell off. And in the third quarter, he got intercepted. And then he got bumped hard and landed on his other non-throwing elbow. So we again ask, why was he even there in the first place? Why in the hell was he back playing in a useless game when their season was already done over a month ago? Why? Some people say, oh, but he needs to get reps. No. He was already injured. The season was already done. Injury mania is running wild. And speaking of injury mania, the injuries weren't done there because even if it was on a dirty hit, which was stupid, by the way, by Jay Ward, Zach Ertz tore his ACL on, yes, a dirty hit, like I said, and season ending, and I hope it's not career ending, but it could be a career ending hit. So Zach Ertz also tore his ACL in this game. And then, yeah, on all this happening, this game exposed everything wrong from this Commanders team in this one game where they got shut out. The flawed defense, this old defense, the lack of the lack of weapons on the offense, especially in the running game. the whole Terry McLaurin situation, everything. Like, this is embarrassing on all fronts. And like, from the NFC title game to no playoffs at all, embarrassing. Like, Dan Quinn and Adam Peters better pray that Black Monday doesn't hit them in 4 weeks. Meanwhile, for the Minnesota Vikings, in his return game, McCarthy played well. His best in clean game all season, in fairness, is against a poor Commanders defense, but he made little mistakes thanks to the ground game of Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. And yeah, the Commanders pulled the Uno reverse card after getting shut out last week in Seattle. And they'll need that balancing act for the last stretch to give McCarthy a little bit of boost of confidence going into an offseason where he can fully develop. So, yeah, not bad stuff for JJ McCarthy and the Vikings, and a little bit of a confidence booster. Meanwhile, down in the gangrene side of the Meadowlands, or should I say the Gotham Black side of the Meadowlands, because, well, yeah, they're wearing their Gotham Black NFL rivalries jersey. The New York Jets took on the Miami Dolphins in a rematch of Week 4, where the Dolphins beat the Jets down in Miami 27-21. And it was pretty much a worse version for the Jets, as the Dolphins ground game ran roughshod on the Jets, collaborating for 3 touchdowns to bury the Jets in their Gotham Blacks 34-10. And yeah, it's pretty much the run game for Mike McDaniel's crew, emphasizing Devon Achane and the rushing attack. And that's pretty much no different in the Gotham City, with the trio of Achane, Ollie Gordon, and Jalen Wright smashing through the Jets with pretty much almost most of the offense, nearly 250 yards with ease. And yeah, that's pretty much a relatively smooth day for the offense. So yeah, the new focus on the offense is gonna be tested next week against the Steelers as they try to at least play spoiler on Pittsburgh's AFC North lead. Meanwhile, for the New York Jets, they're pretty much an ineffective team right now. They tried to play competitive in the first quarter, but Tyrod Taylor, he exited in the first quarter with a groin injury, and after that, it was pretty much all but over as the Dolphins expanded their lead 21-7 by the end of the first half. Undrafted rookie Brady Cook, he had a few moments, but he couldn't finish in the end zone, which pretty much goes to show how deficient these Jets are. Meanwhile, down in Tampa Bay, the New Orleans Saints took on the Tampa Bay Bucks in a rematch of Week 8, where the Bucks beat the Saints 23-3 down in New Orleans. But this time around, it was a much different situation. Tyler Show, who I've had a lot of criticism on, he sped his way through for 2 touchdowns to play spoiler on the Bucks lead in the NFC South, 24-20. And while I still have my quirks about him, I'll give him credit this week. He didn't light up the passing game, but he moved the team downfield well enough to get them into scoring spots, and he managed to create his own scoring opportunities with 2 big touchdown runs. So good for Tyler Show. But the Saints still look for other QB options in the offseason, but I'll give Tyler Show credit this week for leading the team to a big spoiler upset. Meanwhile, for the Tampa Bay Bucks, they really struggled on all fronts this week. Baker Mayfield in the offense, they couldn't get anything positive going other than a touchdown from Bucky Irving. The defense, that has been a real hassle all season. They, of all teams, could not contain Tyler Show and a talent deficient Saints offense, and they also incurred more injuries. You combine all that, they're tied now with the Panthers in the NFC South, as they're in real danger of squandering that away if they don't fix at least some of their issues. Now going to the late afternoon slate of games, down in Vegas, the Las Vegas Raiders took on the Denver Broncos in a rematch of Week 10, where the Broncos beat the Raiders 10-7 in that awful Thursday night game in the Mile High. This time around, it was a little bit different. RJ Harvey went ham on the Raiders' run defense with a 100-yard plus and touchdown day, while their own defense held serve on the silver and black, 24-17, regardless of the box score. Yeah, that was pretty much that. For the Broncos, we didn't really learn anything new about Denver in this game. Their defense pretty much dominated the Raiders from the start. So yeah, like I said, don't let that garbage time points, that box score, mislead you for how this game ended up being. So for Denver, this is where they will truly learn about them in this final stretch. They play the Packers, the Jaguars, the Chiefs, and the Chargers to close out this year. And yeah, we'll really know what this Denver team really brings to the table as they prep for a playoff run and hopefully clinch the AFC West, whether it comes down to them or the Chargers. So, and yeah, that's even with all the upset wins over the Eagles and the Chiefs in their first go around. Meanwhile, for the Las Vegas Raiders, Geno Smith got replaced in this game due to an injury, a shoulder injury. So Kenny Pickett had to go in there and sub for him, and he was a little faster in this game in garbage time. He moved the offense downfield more. He got rid of the ball faster in garbage time situations, but not much to take away from this Raiders team. And this is not to say that he should be the long-term answer, which obviously he isn't, given he was the starter in 2022. But maybe he can at least spark up the offense in these final 4 games if he wants to try and save Pete Carroll's job. Meanwhile, down in Arizona, the LA Rams took on the Arizona Cardinals. Matthew Stafford and the offense put up a 40 bomb to cook up the Cardinals in a bounce back win, 45-17. And yeah, Matthew Stafford and the offense, after falling to the trap of the Panthers, Stafford was back to normal with the 3 touchdown torching of the Birds, 2 of them going to his man, Puka Nacua, before he got to enjoy the rest of the game off with, over 11 minutes left in the game. So, yeah, you have to chill, relax, and get some early rest. Meanwhile, the run game of Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, they got to be very efficient in gashing Arizona for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this was a much needed win after falling into a big trap game in Carolina before next week's more important showdown with the Lions, and then of course another important showdown in Seattle with the Seahawks. Meanwhile, for Arizona, what more do I have to say about them? Because if the past 13 games hasn't told you that change needs to be made in the desert, then this game will, because they allowed a 45-10 lead well before the fourth quarter, for which those 45 points was the most allowed by Arizona all season, and it was just like very convincingly as well. They just look completely unprepared. They look completely outmatched. So, in conclusion, I'd say Jonathan Gannon is good as gone by Black Monday. And you might as well bring General Manager Monty Ossenfort with him too, if you're Arizona. Meanwhile, down in Green Bay, the Packers took on the Chicago Bears in an important NFC North showdown, the first of 2 in 3 weeks. On the Bears' last gasp, Keyshawn Nixon intercepted Caleb Williams in the end zone to help the Packers survive in a tight one and gain first place in the NFC North, 28-21. The Bears had every opportunity to win this game. They managed to claw back from a 14-3 hold to tie the game at 21, and they had a chance to tie it again and send it to overtime after the Packers scored. But I don't know what that last sequence was. I don't know, why Ben Johnson was calling these type of plays. 3 time-wasting runs, and before having Caleb underthrow an interception to Cole Kmet in the end zone. That final sequence was not it, Chief. Getting a first down in the red area was more important. You should have had Caleb throw once before the 4th down. Then, once you get the first down, you could have had chances when in a goal to go situation. Yeah, you had to have that first down first. So this better serve as a learning lesson for Ben Johnson and the Bears when they face the Pack again, this time in Chicago in less than 2 weeks. Meanwhile, for the Packers, this was a game where Christian Watson really went off in this one, especially given last year where Watson was Jordan Love's go-to guy before he got hurt in that last game against the Bears. So since he came back from the ACL injury, he's once again reestablished himself as the top receiver for Jordan Love, especially with Tucker Kraft out for the year. But probably, maybe even more with the 2 touchdown game this week and then doing well last week as well. So, maybe Matt LaFleur and Jordan Love have finally found their man, even after drafting a wide receiver this past April in the draft. So now we have another all-important Sunday Night Football game as the Houston Texans took on the Kansas City Chiefs in a battle of 2 teams trying to save their playoff lives in a struggle bus, 10-all struggle bus that finally ended in the fourth quarter with the Texans defense stopping a questionable 4th and 1 from the Chiefs and cashing it in with Dare Ogunwale's goal line touchdown run to keep the Texans' playoff hopes alive and potentially ending the Chiefs 20-10 in that struggle bus. And the Texans, man, that defense is legit. They may have not got to Mahomes, even with that patchwork offensive line like they wanted, but they managed to get in his face, force him into bad beats all night long, especially in the crucial moments. And those translated into 2 interceptions and 2 4th down stops. One of those being the aforementioned 4th and 1, and just limiting the Chiefs to just 10 points. That's a big deal. Given that Patrick Mahomes can just like really light it up when at a whim. So the defense is like seriously legit, but I still question that offense. I still really question CJ Stroud. And how he's been doing this season. It's just like he has massively regressed. Like he's been playing really bad to the point where I shadow tweeted on Twitter that you might as well just put Davis Mills back in there, because in the games that CJ Stroud was out, Davis Mills was at least kind of moving this offense. They had 3 straight 3-and-outs, and then CJ Stroud was too slow at processing the defense. I feel like Davis Mills in those situations would have at least gotten the offense moving. So I feel like when push comes to shove, I'm sorry, but CJ Stroud, if he doesn't get it together, it's gonna end up costing the Texans in the playoffs if they do make it there. Meanwhile, for the Chiefs, the defense played as well as it could throughout the game. They showed up to play, but the rest of the team, just too many self-inflicted errors, and that got in their own way. Patrick Mahomes was off his rocker again, being flustered by the Texans' great defensive line. While it didn't help having 3 starting offensive linemen out there, and he lost another in the first play. And credit to whatever was left, holding their own. Yeah, he had his own self-inflicted errors. His receivers had butterfingers. May have eaten some before the game. They had butterfingers on must-have catches. But even when Mahomes had time to throw, he was throwing it behind his guys. Kelsey were not in sync. And Kelsey was just way off. And he threw 2 poor interceptions that pretty much sealed the deal for the Chiefs. But this game will be very notable for Andy Reid's questionable decision to go 4th and 1 on their own 31 with 10 minutes to go, and they failed. They could have just punted in that situation. I kind of get the aggressiveness that for Reed to go for it on that situation. But they're still deadlocked at 10. But so I didn't understand the situation there. And Houston's offense awoken enough to capitalize on that. So yeah, the Chiefs, they did this to themselves. So they won't win the AFC West a 10th straight time. And for them to make the playoffs, they have a big hill to climb. Just to make it there, if they can make it there. Meanwhile, in the Monday Night Football game to close out week number 14, the LA Chargers took on the Philadelphia Eagles in what was a defensive slugfest, a sloppy game, you name it. And this one went the extra distance, and in the end, Tony Jefferson made the game-winning interception on Jalen Hurts near the goal line to give the Chargers a key win in overtime, 22-19. The Philadelphia Eagles, they have a serious problem on offense. They are broken as hell. When you look at them, outside of a few big throws and Saquon Barkley's fourth quarter touchdown run, which finally he got going, they were still all over the place in this game with many chances to win. Like Justin Herbert and his own offense, they were giving him many chances to win with their own turnovers. Yet AJ Brown dropped 2 critical balls, including a catchable touchdown, and a nice thrown ball from Jalen Hurts. And that was just excruciating. But Jalen Hurts himself also airmailed his guys several times. But it was even more excruciating for Eagles fans was his 5 turnovers, including the one to lose the game. And yeah, for all the Eagles fans that raided SoFi, that was probably a pain to watch. Nick Sirianni apparently was more involved in the game planning with Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator, in the lead up, but I didn't really see a lot of difference. There wasn't a lot of change for this offense. So they'll probably look back to form as they play really weak teams in the Raiders and the Commanders in 3 of their final 4 games. But yeah, that probably when there probably won't be a difference maker come playoff time when they have to face actual teams. And even then, it wouldn't surprise me either if this offense somehow continues to struggle against these weak ass teams too. For the Chargers, it was an ugly game for all sides, but they weathered the storm to pull out an important win. Herbert, even with the surgically repaired non-throwing hand, wearing a glove, he was playing with risk, but he still ended up being a well played player in this one. He still played being the leading rusher and making a lot of key throws in this one, even if the mid-rangers were kind of risky, but he still made them nonetheless. But it was the defense though that came clutch, saved the day with 5 turnovers on Jalen Hurts, with Tony Jefferson's being the biggest one of them all to give the Chargers the win. So yeah, I feel like they'll probably though have to play this way until Justin Herbert can get a little somewhat healthy, and with given all the O-line injuries that they have currently, including another one in this game. So when you look at this this past week, a lot of things happened in the playoff picture that is going to go into the final 4 weeks of the season, and hey, that's just the beginning of it. Like this is the second most important time of the year for the NFL, and it's only going to get better from here. It's only going to get better from here as we get to clinching season. Who's going to be in? Who's going to be out? Who's going to be for all the lower teams? Who's going to be tanking for their draft positioning? It's only going to get better from here. So to wrap things up, let's look at the winners and losers from week number 14. Starting with the winners, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They played well against the Indianapolis Colts in a big AFC South showdown, and now they have complete control of the division. They just have the Texans to watch their backs on. as both teams enter an important stretch of games. The Buffalo Bills defense, they came in clutch in a shootout game with Christian Benford getting the pick six to eventually seal their win over the Cincinnati Bengals. And then the Carolina Panthers. Yeah, they were on a bye week, but they got some big time help from their division rival Saints, who they'll play this upcoming week. So for now, they got some big time help from the Saints beating the Bucs, and now it's their turn to return the favor to try and get a win over New Orleans and play catch up to Tampa Bay. Meanwhile, looking at the losers, Joe Burrow, he played well in this game against the Bills, but can't have two back-breaking interceptions, especially back-to-back. And one of those first ones was a pick six, which eventually sealed the fate for Cincinnati. The Indianapolis Colts, not only did they lose that game against Jacksonville, but it's, again, the way they lost that game to Jacksonville, with losing Daniel Jones to a season-ending torn Achilles. And now this season is pretty much all but done, unless Phillip Rivers can rewind the clock, go back down the well, the fountain of youth, and return to his late 2000s form and bring life back to the Colts offense. And then, speaking of offense, you look at the Kansas City Chiefs offense. They couldn't handle the heat of the Texans defense. Too many dropped balls, 2 interceptions from Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce. Like they couldn't rely on him when times got tough. Yeah, they were not great under the bright lights of Sunday night at home, and now their playoff hopes are on complete life support going into Week 15. So speaking of Week 15, let's look at my top 5 headlines going into the first of final 4 weeks of the NFL regular season, as the push for the playoffs really begins. That means no more bye weeks. All 32 teams are playing for the rest of the regular season these final 4 weeks. And yeah, things are going to get really spicy and icy with that very cold lasagna. Yeah, it's going to get real good, or maybe real bad. I don't know. But hey, every single team is in action for the rest of the way, and makes for good TV, pal. So we asked the question, which team locks in their spots, makes a run, or collapses? Yeah, we're about to see all the stories play out in the final 4 weeks towards the beginning of January. And there are a couple other things that I'm looking forward to with some of these games, like the Ravens and Bengals facing off in the second of 2 games that they're playing against each other since Thanksgiving. They face each other in a potential AFC North elimination game. For the Bengals, they really need to save their asses for both AFC North contention and, well, general playoff contention. For the Bears, Texans, Panthers, and the Cowboys, they're playing some interesting games this week against the Browns, the Cardinals, the Saints, and the Vikings. They got to be careful with these games, as they're all competing for playoff spots and division title hopes, but they got to beware of these trap games. Even especially, with the Bears and the skid marks. They're playing Shadur Sanders in that game, who's a complete wild card. And then the Saints going up against Carolina. They are coming off a big upset win over Tampa Bay. Also, the Vikings, even with JJ McCarthy's 50-50 ability, you never know with him. And then one of the marquee matchups for Week 15 is a rematch from Week 5, as the Bills look to avenge that loss against the Patriots, this time taking place in Foxborough, as they look to maintain ground in both the wildcard and AFC East race. And then last but not least, you have an interconference showdown between the Green Bay Packers and the Denver Broncos, as they face off in a test for both teams. That mean their defenses and their quarterbacks. So yeah, a lot of good showdowns happening around the league in what should be a fun Kickstarter for the final 4 weeks of the season. So I'm here for it. I'm here for all of it. As things get really tense, really tight in this playoff race, with everyone back in action. So let me know your thoughts and opinions on week number 14 in this 2025 campaign. How'd your team do, or didn't do. And if you're one of the teams, if you're one of your teams that you're a fan of is off to Cancun already, let me know what they need to do to try and make a run for next year, or if they are going to make a run for next year. But yeah, let's have a conversation about all these things in the comments. If you're watching this on YouTube, or if you're listening to the audio, send me a message on social media at Very Cold Lasagna. But that's going to do it for this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna. Once again, bringing you all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports for you sports fans out there like you and me. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. And as always, keep that lasagna very cold and in the fridge with your takes on the world of sports. And yeah, we'll be back once again in the next episode talking about my San Francisco 49ers and looking at their upcoming game off the bye week against the Tennessee Titans. And yeah, we'll be back next week again talking about the past week that was week number 15. But until then, until the next ones, as I should say, peace out.